Welcome to the STLK in the UTA Cougars podcast. I'm Paul. This is Steve. Hot start last weekend. Texas Tech falls to BYU 27-14. Give me your initial takeaways.
It's a great day to be a Cougar on a Tuesday here following a good win. Coming off the TCU game, we talked about it. This is going to be a big part of BYU's season, right? Is BYU going to fold up? Could we be looking at another 2017 season where we start to drop games, fan support starts to drop off, the players might start to bail on the program? But BYU came back with a vengeance on Saturday, a really hot start, and came out really quick out of the gates, scored a touchdown on their first drive.
Now, I don't have any stats on this. Is this the first time in over a decade BYU scored on the first drive?
It feels that way, doesn't it?
Sure felt like it,
I
right?
mean, even the games we win this year, you look at Arkansas, some of these, the early FCS games, Sam Houston State, we did not have a hot start.
We didn't have a hot game against Sam Houston. That was terrible.
We kind of grinded out the win. And so it was nice to see BYU come out of the tunnel, right? The fans are there. It's kind of an evening-ish game, right? It's a pretty sunset over Lavelle Edwards Stadium. BYU comes out hot, gets the ball, takes the ball. I believe Texas Tech wins the toss and defers like everybody does nowadays. Kicks off to BYU. And one of the first plays of the game, we have a run by LJ Martin. Everybody's hitting their blocks. We got a hat on a hat. LJ Martin has one safety to beat, and he beats him and then kind of gets angled over there on the sideline. But that first rush and that first drive was sure
that first run by LJ. And I'm not a guy with football, especially to see one play and be like, okay, the game's over, especially 0-0. That felt like it just gave us all the momentum in the world.
And we've been talking about it. If BYU can get out to a hot start, especially against these programs, like TCU was on the rails last week, and they're the ones that got the hot start and reignited their season, right? That's what it felt like where BYU was this week. They're the ones to get out the hot start. Texas Tech, they're kind of wishy-washy with their program where they're at. They'd obviously been down a couple quarterbacks, and I'm sure their fans coming into the game are like, what are we going to look like early? And BYU really took control of the game with that long run. BYU came into this game averaging just 67 rushing yards per game, and on that first drive alone, they had 61 yards.
That's awesome.
So they almost met their rushing average there on that first drive, and obviously Chase capped it off with his 3-yard touchdown catch.
What's hard about this rushing issue we've had all year? You said 67, and I was like, wow, that much. Like that's kind of a lot, isn't it, for BYU? BYU has been independent, or was independent for a long time, for a very long time. So it was very hard for BYU to measure themselves up against anyone other than national powerhouses. This year, BYU is a newcomer out of 4 newcomers to the Big 12. The other 3 teams combined, 1 win, 11 losses. BYU is well better than that. That's pretty impressive.
Well, I think a lot of fans coming into the season saw BYU as the Big 12 newcomer that could really come in and make an immediate impact.
Yes.
BYU has been playing Power 5 teams consistently, whereas, some of the Cincy's, the UCFs, Houston had not been paying the caliber teams that BYU had. But, I mean, BYU's answered the call so far with back-to-back P5 games, right? It's one thing to go win a P5 game and then come home and play a lower-level team, right, and kind of recover, and then you got your bye week and things like that. But BYU has been consistently playing P5 teams and performing at a high level. And so it's encouraging as a fan base to see BYU compete at the highest level. I think that's what we all want. And so, it's good to see BYU beat a Power 5 team like Texas Tech.
So back to that comment I made about the first drive touchdown, which it legit does not feel like I've seen that since I was 10 years old. The first drive defensive stop on the goal line or a couple yards out, you tell me, was that a Jake Strong fumble? Was it just a muffed handoff? That was awesome.
Well, BYU scores their touchdown. They kick it off to Texas Tech, and give them some credit. They responded to BYU, right? They're driving the field, and it's, right before they kind of stall out, you start to think like, oh, could this be a Big 12 shootout? Right? Could this be a 42-35 type of game?
I was itching for that type of game, by the way.
And Texas Tech stalls out. It's 4th down. I was surprised to see they decided to go for it, and they get down there with their brand new quarterback, their freshman quarterback. And it looks like the snap was low, and it seemed like Texas Tech had quite a few low snaps on the day, but the snap was low, and he's trying to hurry and hand it off, and he fumbles it, and even if he gets it to him, I don't think they get the first down either way.
No.
But that fumble was a big momentum shift in the game early on.
Well, it was so clogged up in there, you're right. I don't think they got the first down, but to see a mistake happen from an opponent instead of BYU that early in the game and it go for us, I was sitting on the couch, I was kind of giddy. I was like a little kid.
With BYU at 5-2 this year, you look at the team, you look at the stats. Obviously, the stats don't indicate a 5-2 team, but BYU is finding ways to win. And I think what you're talking about is a big way that BYU is kind of scrapping through these games is the ball seems to be bouncing their way more often. And I think that comes from preparation. I think there's obviously an element of luck there, but BYU has done a better job this year of protecting the ball on offense and causing turnovers on defense.
Yeah, that turnover, they had a defensive touchdown if I'm remembering correct. Who scored that again?
BYU gets the ball back. They punt the ball back to Texas Tech, but credit to our punt team, they pin them deep, and it was that south end zone there over the right side of the screen when you're looking at the broadcast, and I had flashbacks of Jake Heaps. I don't know if you're old enough to watch Jake Heaps, but
I am.
Jake Heap comes in, and I believe it was the Utah game, and man, the place is going nuts, and he gets the ball, and it just fumbles it into the end zone, and Utah, I believe, had the touchdown there, and it was very similar play. So I believe it was Eddie Heckert that jumped on the ball and got the touchdown to keep the ball rolling. BYU's up 14-0 really early on in the game. I did feel bad for AJ Vong-Pachong. He was there on top of the ball and it just squirted out, and could have had his first career touchdown.
As a defensive player, that's the type of thing you like stay up at night, not worrying about, but you're like, man, that could have been pretty sweet.
I think in the fourth quarter, Crew Akeley had a surefire pick six, and he dropped it right in his hands as well. And so, I think hopefully those guys get another chance. But you got to kick yourself for
when
that.
I played defensive back on my second grade flag football team, I remember vividly I had the same thing. I was going up for it, and I said that this is a pick six, and I dropped it. Cut to that was actually my last organized football game ever. Just to take you behind the scenes there. Second and long. Do you have any stats on that? Or is it just a gut feeling that we do second and long runs more than any other team in the nation?
Well, the passing game has had flashes this year. First and 10, we throw the ball, and we've had it seems like a lot of incompletions first and 10. Mm-hmm. We get a second and 10. And then, I don't have any stats. Maybe you do, but man, it sure seems like BYU is running the ball a lot on second and 10 and putting us into those third and long situations. And our third down conversion rate shows that our third downs are too long. Right?
Really
We're getting
long.
third and 7, third and 8, third and 9 almost every single drive. And so, it's tough when you can't run the ball on a second and long, or maybe mix up the calls a little bit to get a better
what's hard is you watch any other team in the nation, or you just watch games across the board, and it's always a second and long pass play. And BYU, I feel like it started 2 or 3 years ago, maybe when Aaron Roderick came over, but they're like, it's a tendency breaker. We're going to run it. They're not expecting the run. I could be wrong. That's why I asked if you had any stats. I saw something that BYU is running it over 70% on second and 6 or longer. That's not a tendency breaker anymore. People are catching on to it. It's frustrating as a fan to watch it.
And these are the type of things that BYU has to be able to self-scout and figure out, right?
Yeah.
Hopefully they knew about this stat before they saw it on Twitter or from some fan or from some account. Mm-hmm. But I think it's hard because you throw the ball on first down, right? We love to see Keaton Slovis sling the rock around. We have some good receivers. Maybe guys are banged up. Chase only had 9 yards this game. He had the touchdown, and then was basically no-showed the rest of the game. Touchdown on the first drive and didn't do much after that. So you love to see Keaton throwing the ball around, but on first and 10, you get an incomplete pass, and now here you are second and long. And it seems like, you have two choices. Okay, you run the ball and you get hopefully a third and manageable, or you throw the ball again. If you get another incompletion, then we're in third and long and you have to throw the ball 3 times in a row. And so, putting myself in Aaron Roderick's shoes, I know he does a ton of homework. He spends a lot of time watching film, breaking down, the defense and where we're going to win. But it does seem like BYU has gotten too reliant on the run on second and long.
It is hard because it's a first and 10, and obviously you're looking to not having a completion on that play. But I think it does come down to the first down execution, because second and 10, second and 9, second and 8, those are way too hard on us as a team to get completions. Because just like you said, it's either third and long or probably second and long because we ran the ball.
There's been times where I feel like we could get a little more creative in the short pass game, right? We have capable running backs that can catch the ball out of the backfield. We have quick guys. Now, early on in the season, we had Parker Kingston, who seemed to get some of those like behind the line of scrimmage catches, right?
Or even like sweeps.
The jet sweeps, right? And just mix up the look a little bit. But it seems like we've kind of gone away from that. I mean, we have guys like Isaac Rex. You watch some of these NFL games. I was watching the Vikings game last night, and they're doing things that are really creative with their tight ends, where, for example, it looks like it's going to be a deep pass. The quarterback's dropping back. The tight end looks like he's staying in to chip Bosa or one of those edges, and then he's going to leak out, right, and just catch a 2 or 3 yard pass. He runs up the field, they cut out his legs, and that's an 8 yard gain.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Isaac Rex could actually absolutely be that type of player for BYU. So I'd be looking for a little bit more creativity out of the short passing game to keep us out of those second and longs.
Well, I feel like something that really helps in those situations as well is stretching the field horizontally. And like you said, I don't feel like we're utilizing the speedsters because we have them. I just feel like it's either a run up the middle or a crossing route or a quick slant, whatever it is. It doesn't really open up the field horizontally, and that's where we're running into issues.
And you remember last year, Puka Nacua, he was great at this, right? They gave him a lot of jet sweeps.
Yep.
They throw the ball onto him on a bubble route or a flash route, and he'd make one guy miss, and then he's getting 8, 9, 10 yards. And at any point, he could make a second guy miss and take it to the house. Yep. You saw Parker Kingston come in this year, and you thought, okay, he can be this caliber of player. Now, obviously, it's going to take a couple years. We see what Puka's doing in the NFL, but it seemed early on like that was going to be the case. And then second, third, fourth game, don't remember exactly what it was. He comes around. I think it was the first play of the game, maybe Kansas. and Parker Kingston comes around on the jet sweep and just gets lit up, right?
Yes.
And then he leaves the game, and I don't know if where the coaches are at there. I don't know where Parker's health is, but maybe they thought, with exactly where he's at, let's not give him the ball and give him a chance to get lit up like this.
Not a linebacker coming in full speed at him. Speaking of receivers, Darius Lassiter, oh my goodness.
Number 3 play on SportsCenter?
I'm not sure. It should have been number 1. Was it not? No, I didn't see the top 10.
I don't think it was number 1. There's number 1. I mean, it's the best month to be a sports fan, right? We got the playoffs.
Yeah.
The NBA opens tonight. We have NFL. We have college football. So there's a lot to compete with. But I believe he was the number 3 play on SportsCenter.
And I love BYU and I love the national attention. I'm going to touch on that in a little bit. But if a guy from Ohio State, Marvin Harrison, I believe. You're
saying he'd be number 1, wouldn't he?
He would be number 1. A guy from Georgia, their tight end, he would be number 1. It sucks that BYU's guys aren't, however you want to say it. That pass and that catch should have been number 1 on SportsCenter. And I can't wait to watch it every time it shows up on my feed, whether it's Twitter, Instagram. I'm watching it 3 or 4 times. It was sweet.
It was a great catch. Chase did have the number 1 play on SportsCenter. Granted, it was to win the game at Arkansas at an SEC
a little bit
opponent. Different. And so some love from the BYU receivers. The SportsCenter team has given us some love. I do think there was a couple catches in the second half that Lassiter might have liked to have back.
Yeah.
Right. I believe it was 2 third downs. The ball hits him in the hands and he drops it. So maybe Keenan just got to put it up a little higher, let him go high point with one hand.
Let him go grab it with one hand. Don't put it where both hands can touch it. It's too volatile there. The trick plays, speaking of Isaac Rex getting down the field, that was pretty sweet.
Double reverse, pitch it back, throw it down the sideline.
Yes, we've seen, I can't remember what NFL team, they ran it almost identical 2 weeks ago, and then BYU obviously is watching that kind of stuff, and they pick it up and they run it perfectly.
Have you watched the quarterback series on Netflix?
Parts of it.
Yeah, they're following Patrick Mahomes. They're going to practice, and he talks about at practice. They have this period in their practice where they're allowed to just bring all their crazy ideas to Andy Reid.
Okay.
And sometimes it sticks, and sometimes it's like, we're not going to do that.
Right.
You've probably seen this some of their games, the snow globe huddle.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And so they all get in the huddle and they put their arms on each other and they're kind of running around and they run up to the line and run a play.
They scored on that play, right?
They've scored on, I think, once or twice now. Yeah. And this is the type of thing, the creativity. Aaron Roderick does like to dial up the trick plays.
He does.
And they ran the double reverse. They pitched it back to Keaton, and Keaton, usually after that happens, it's either like the guy's open or he's not.
Yeah.
Right. And that type of pass is usually going over the top. You get the safeties to bite, and then you throw it over the top. But I like the wrinkle. I don't know. Maybe Rex wasn't the number 1 target, and that guy was covered
because it was a tight window to throw that thing.
And
he was barely past the corner, and the safety was coming down.
A lot of credit to the throw. It was a great catch. I believe he got hit on the play. It was right there on the sideline, and so I don't know if he might have been the second read, but regardless, it was a nice play and well timed.
Yeah, that was pretty sweet. Our defense. I just want to circle back to that, man. How fun is this to have a defense that's making plays consistently?
I don't know if Jay Hill's been wearing black all season, but if this was his first game wearing the black polo, he looked good in it, and he called a good defensive game.
I think there's some correlation.
Yeah, there's got to be. I was really impressed with BYU's defensive scheme, and frankly, this is what I was expecting going into the TCU game. Now, maybe things got off to a rocky start, and they kind of had to abandon the game plan earlier than they wanted to, but BYU's bringing the heat, and they are running all sorts of confusing blitzes. I went back and watched the game, and you have the D end lining up in a 2-point rather than a 3-point. At the snap of the ball, he's bailing into coverage, and they're bringing the backside outside linebacker, right? Stuff like that is hard to pick up. I played O-line in high school, and when you're prepping for these blitzes, right, you see a guy walk up and you're calling out, all right, we gotta grab this guy.
Yep.
If he bails and someone comes from the other side, he's usually a free rusher. And so BYU is bringing all sorts of zone blitzes. Tyler Batty one time dropped into coverage, tipped a ball that was intercepted.
Yep.
I believe our D tackle even dropped once. I've seen that in Utah games. Maybe that comes from Kalani being under Kyle Whittingham.
Yeah.
So just all sorts of creative blitzes and bringing pressure from all over the field. I like it.
Well, especially when you have a freshman quarterback, a true freshman, I believe, in Jake Strong, coming to Provo. It's not an easy place to play. This is the perfect time to dial up a defense like that, where you have this defensive reads, that are hard to understand, even for a veteran quarterback. But for a freshman to come in with the Cougars right behind him, yelling, screaming, and they're all sober, which is the coolest part. It's really hard, man. I can't imagine how hard of a weekend he had.
And the Velodrome Stadium was rocking. I was pretty surprised. I always watch the tickets through the week to kind of get a feel for, is it going to be a sellout? Is it going to be a hyped up game? And there was a few thousand tickets still available midweek.
Really? And
so to see the stadium as full as it was, it finished. They reported over capacity attendance. I believe capacity is 63,400. I believe they reported a little bit above that, 63, 8 or 9, something to that nature. So mean, the BYU fans showed out. It was an evening game, a 5 p.m. kick. Obviously, it was homecoming, some people coming back. The Big 12 was in town. Brett Yormark and others were there to do some conferences. This was BYU's Big 12 game this year, bringing everybody in. They had the Cougar tails.
Yeah,
see the Cougar tails with the bacon on them.
I'm not sure if you caught this. You could only pre-order them.
You couldn't walk up to the window and grab them.
I don't believe so. I saw a post on Twitter about it. Almost kind of like set me back. I'm like, where are we in a society where I have to pre-order my donuts for the weekend?
Well, they should bring it to your seat. If you're ordering it, shouldn't they deliver it?
At least. And I want a handwritten note by Cosmo himself saying, thank you for pre-ordering my donut. But yeah, sorry to interrupt your fans, but yeah, it was a full house.
It was a full house. Yeah, I wasn't at the game. I was in US at the Utah USC game with some buddies. Had a fun weekend in Southern California. I'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah.
But even on TV watching the game, the stands were full. You saw the pictures after the game with some with the sunset. They had the mountain backdrop in a couple pictures, and then one at night they just had an overhead shot, and all the corners seemed full. Like I said, over capacity crowd. I was really impressed by the BYU fans, and I want to contrast that with what I saw this weekend at the Coliseum.
Yes.
So been pretty excited about this for a while. My buddies and I decided to go to the Coliseum this year. Typically, we go to a BYU away game. I have one buddy who's a little bit of I call him a heathen. Maybe you wouldn't call him that, but he decided, let's go to a Utah game. We've been going to all these BYU games. We decided to go to USC Utah game. Go to the Coliseum. It's gorgeous weather, right? We're in Los Angeles. It's a beautiful stadium. It's iconic. They're celebrating the 100th year of the Coliseum. The Olympics were there like 99 years ago, right?
Yeah.
And out front, they have the Roman statues or the Troy statues, whatever they are. And the one end zone, they have like the flame. It's a really iconic and cool venue.
Yeah.
And you get into the game and they're doing like their pregame hype, and the stands are half empty. Right. The one end of the stadium is completely empty. They have most of the sections tarped off. There's multiple sections that are all the way empty, even in the lower bowl. Everything behind us, I'm in the one end zone. Everything behind us, there's multiple rows that are empty, and it's just really scattered. And when the game kicks off, my buddies are like, we're going to go sit down there on the 50-yard line, right?
Why
There's
not?
nobody here.
Yeah.
And it did fill in. I don't know. Maybe it's the Los Angeles traffic, but just to set a contrast, USC had 58,000 fans at that game. That was a top 20 matchup against one of their bigger rivals of late, right? The USC-Utah games, there's been some fun games the last couple of years.
Probably the biggest game left on their schedule.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah.
UCLA at the end of the year, maybe that's a big one.
Right, but if they don't win this game, then that UCLA game doesn't mean much.
That's a great point. So, I mean, this is a big game, and it's 58,000 people, right? BYU's coming off arguably the worst loss in the Colony Sitaki area. Maybe the second worst loss in the era. And they're bringing out nearly 65,000 fans. And let's contrast this as well. The state of Utah has 3 million people. Los Angeles alone has 3 million people.
Yes.
Right. And so I'm impressed by BYU fans. Really great fan base. That was a top 20 game. They couldn't sell out their stadium, and BYU's getting more fans to their team after a really disappointing weekend.
You sent me a picture of the Coliseum and you said, check this out. And I was like, wow, he must have shown up really early. So I leave the picture, go to the ESPN app, and I'm like, oh, the game probably starts in a couple hours. And at that point, I think there was 10 minutes before kickoff.
Well, they run their white horse out there. I think his name's Traveler, and they got the Trojan with the sword, and it's like a pretty cool environment.
Right.
And they're doing their thing that, they got the piece and they're doing the fight on thing. And I'm trying to figure it out, because I'm not cheering for Utah, so I'm cheering for USC, and I'm trying to figure it out. And yeah, it was shocking looking around. They couldn't sell it. It's a top 20 team. They have the Heisman quarterback coming back. They have Lincoln Riley, one of the most hyped up college football coaches, and 5-star recruits everywhere. A lot around the program. And so anyway, all that to say, I'm really impressed by BYU turning out 65,000 fans to that game.
That was really cool to see BYU, especially against a Texas Tech team. It's not like they're undefeated. It's not like they're a powerhouse in the conference right now. They're just another team in the conference. And to your point, they oversold, which is really cool. Speaking of not a powerhouse in the conference, they were favored by 3 points, man. And I talked about that last week. It's kind of a lot for a home dog. BYU, man, they obviously took offense to it. And I'm not sure how much these college kids are looking at this. But to be a home underdog against Texas Tech with the team Texas Tech has, BYU to come out and win by 2 scores, I don't think this game was in question once. And maybe mid fourth quarter when they started to move the ball a little bit, you're like, okay, I could see this getting close. But this game never felt like it was out of BYU's control, did it?
In the second half, there was kind of a lull, right? The offense didn't do a ton. There's, I believe it was 5 out of 7 possessions were 3 and outs. I wrote down some stats here. The average drive in the second half was 4.4 plays, 9.7 yards.
Is this both teams or just BYU?
This is BYU. Okay. They had 7 possessions in the second half, and they averaged 9.7 yards, and they possessed the ball for 2 minutes and 12 seconds. That was their average drive.
Not great.
So there was a bad feeling out of the second half, but I agree. I don't think this game was ever really in question because of the hot start.
Yep.
And, if the game goes 14-14 at halftime and BYU pulls away in the second half, we all feel really good.
Yeah.
Right? We win the game and we looked good.
Yeah.
maybe we're a little bit of victims of our own success in the first half because we played so well in the first half and we set that bar high. The second half, obviously, we didn't have that success, and that was a little bit of a letdown. But yeah, I agree. It is. I mean, a 3-point dog at home to a team that's mid-tier with their third string quarterback.
Yep.
That's hard to swallow. And I was happy to see the players come out and kind of have a lot of motivation to play well.
Me too. Back to your point about the second half, the average drive was, you said 2 minutes. BYU got the ball back, I want to say with 7 minutes left in the fourth quarter, and we milked the clock all the way down to 18 seconds before we punted away.
By far, BYU's best drive in the second half.
Yeah.
We didn't get points on the drive, which is disappointing.
Fine. That's fine.
But yeah, at that point in the game, you just got to get the clock out. Yeah. The only drive we scored on the second half, I believe it was a fumble or an interception. We got the ball. We ran the ball 5 times to Aiden Robbins.
Yep.
Give credit to him. I think we got 19 yards, and then Will Farron comes out and makes a kick. Mm-hmm. And so getting points on that drive was nice. But yeah, so yeah, I say that there's 2 minute. The average drive was 2 minutes and 12 seconds. That's really helped by that final drive, right?
Really
Most of the drives were 3 and outs. Like I said, 5 of 7 drives in the second half were 3 and outs. But it was nice to see that BYU could put them away late.
But we had 8 first down rushes this game, which I believe was
first down rushes.
Sorry,
rushes for a first down.
Rushes for a first down. I worded that terribly. But yeah, I believe that broke our in-season record, 5 yards per carry, which I'm 90% sure we didn't have a game close to that yet. So that's really promising. But more importantly is our defense. Like you said, our offense came out really, really lethargic in the second half, but our defense didn't fall apart. And I played defensive back in second grade, so I get it. But it can't be easy to go out there every 5 minutes in real time, not 5 minutes in game time. You're out there every few minutes.
3 minutes and 35-second commercial.
Exactly. Yeah. And you're like, dude, can you guys help me out? Stay on the field a little bit
And
longer.
it's hard. When the offense is going 3 and out every possession, you are on the field a lot, right?
Yeah.
And not only is it taxing physically, but when you're coming off the field, your coaches are scheming with you, right? They're drawing things on, if you watch them, they're drawing things on the whiteboard. They're talking about, what are we doing in this set? When they motion here, how are we responding? And when your offense is consistently going 3 and out, you don't have enough time to adjust in game. So it makes it much harder on the defense. So a lot of credit to Jay Hill wearing the black shirt. Look for it this weekend, and to that defensive front and the defensive, the backfield played well as well.
Yeah. Will Compton, I saw a clip. I'm sure you probably saw it. This is kind of circling social media this weekend. He was saying as a defense, he played linebacker in the NFL for 9 years. For those who don't know who Will Compton is, he was saying after the first down, 9 times out of 10, the defense is just like, get me off the field. I don't care if you score. I don't care if you fumble it. Like, let me get, like this is a long time, man, especially those big bodies, especially if they're running a lot. It's like, I really don't want to have to hit this guy 10 more times this drive. Credit to the defense. They played incredible.
Big credit.
You just don't want to see them fall apart. And that's exactly what they didn't do.
Right. And yeah, I thought the defense played especially well in the second half. Obviously, they did give up that long, I think it was a long pass. They had the one drive that scored points. But yeah, the defense absolutely did their job. I want to touch on the running game again, though. Yeah. A couple cool things to point out. Like you said, five yards a carry is huge for BYU this season. Aiden Robbins looks massive. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you noticed, his shoulder pads don't fit over his shoulders.
He's been in the weight room a time or two, I heard.
I don't know if they went with the Aaron Donald, like, Aaron Donald wears like the kicker shoulder pads.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's what they did, but his arms are so big. He was wearing that gray undershirt and like you could see the whole sleeve because the pads don't fit over him. Mm-hmm. And he looks massive. It was fun to see him out there, apparently coming back from a rib or a core injury.
Yeah.
And the one that sticks out of my mind, it was 3rd and 13. I think it was on this drive you're talking about, maybe at the end of the game where we had to milk the clock. It's 3rd and 13, and as BYU tends to do on a second, 3rd and long, we hand off the ball, and I think he gets contacted 2-3 yards in, and he gets 10 yards after carry. You see the offensive line, Connor Playpalm come in and push him, and he falls forward for that first down. That was a nice moment.
Yeah, that was huge. I can't echo enough just how much the running game showed up, how much the defense showed up. Keaton Slovis, I don't think we've said his name once today. He played a great game. Played a good game. I mean, we won the game. It was one of those games where you're not really looking at the quarterback, and I'm not sure where you stand on is the quarterback stat a win? Is that going to his pocket? This game, probably not. I know for a fact Jake Strong didn't do anything to help his team. He had 4 total turnovers. But credit to Keaton, dude. He stayed in the pocket. He looked way more composed than he did last week against TCU. Go ahead, sorry.
He never looked comfortable last week against TCU. He had the happy feet a lot. We talked about it. He's fleeing the pocket when he doesn't need to. Sometimes he needs to throw the ball away, and he wasn't. He did look much more comfortable. I think that's a credit to the O-line as well.
Yes.
They're starting to gel. Obviously, a week ago, they had some of those shifts. Connor Play's now playing center. We have Miley at guard, right? So there's been some shifts, and it seems like they're really starting to gel and do a good job keeping him comfortable. Another thing I want to point out was just the pass pro from the running backs, right? They had a great game rushing, but it's one thing to be a great rusher. That's only part of the gig when you're a running back. But I remember one play, specifically, I believe it was LJ. It was a 3rd and long, and there was a free rusher coming up the middle.
Yeah.
And instead of waiting for him to come to him, he just went straight at him and cut him right at the line.
Yep.
And Keaton ended up completing the pass. So I was impressed not only by the rushing, but also by some of the pass pro and those little things that don't usually show up on the stat sheet.
I don't know if this is the place or if it's appropriate to talk about this in this setting. How good did Cosmo look, man? I mean, my goodness.
He rips his shirt off, right? And
yeah.
He's all over social media.
Oh.
Everybody loves him.
Barstool loves him.
Barstool loves Cosmo. Everybody, and I don't know if it's just because I get fed a lot of the BYU content. The algorithms on X are doing pretty good. But from what I can see, there's national brands all over the place retweeting Cosmo. Mm-hmm. He's doing the fire thing, right? They got the fire dancers out there. Cosmo's a sensation.
He that was pretty cool to see when me and my wife were watching the game, and it cut to him, and I was like, oh, like don't look, like he looks incredible. Please don't look at that.
Are those like sprayed on abs?
I don't know. The
like back muscle?
I didn't even think about it. That's how good it looked. I was like, yeah, that's just Cosmo. Like that's just how he's built. Like, I don't know what else to tell you. And then it dawned on me that someone's behind the suit, and I was like, it probably looked better than Cosmo does. Dang it. But yeah, man, he looked incredible. Back to your point, the national branding. I think BYU is really taking a positive step, especially being in the Big 12. Barstool recognizes them. The Pat McAfee show has Mormon Fridays now. I'm not
they're
sure
coming
if you
to Utah
saw that.
this weekend.
Yes.
And they said they're doing it again. Yeah.
Yeah, dude, there's been a few things where I'm like, Utah's really moving as far as a national brand, and you can't only help but think this helps with not only recruits in football, but basketball, soccer, baseball, whatever it is. BYU's getting a lot of attention.
Yeah, and BYU's playing Texas on ABC this weekend in a primetime slot, 2:30 Central. So more to come about the Texas game upcoming. But I think you're right. BYU's getting a lot of national recognition, and we're finally there, right? Yeah. Independence, a decade or more of us just wanting to be on the in club, and here we are. And it seems like BYU's taking advantage and doing a good job. Let me hit one more thing as we talk about guys that are jacked and doing a great job. We got to give a shout out to BYU's punting game.
Wow.
And I've joked about this in this past, but Ryan Rico might be the best player on BYU's football team. That guy can absolutely pound. I don't remember exactly which punt it was, but he's standing on his own goal line. It was north end zone. He's standing on his own goal line and he boots it. I believe the returner is about the 30-yard line, and he runs back to the 15 to catch the ball.
Yeah.
Like just a massive punt. But unfortunately, oftentimes when you kick it that far, you out punt your own coverage. And so they did have a couple good returns. One thing I think that they could explore is a lot of times BYU is not getting, the other team's not punt block, they're punt return. And so they're not rushing. If he could take just another half step before he kicks it, gives his guys another second to get down the field, I think that could go a long way for BYU special teams. But man, the one they had a really good drive. Tyler Batty comes out of nowhere and just lights up the guy, and they get a fumble. BYU jumps on it. So
that was pretty sweet. You can only help but feel like you attribute that to the special teams, right? Like you're pinning them back. What was it? The 8-yard line or something? It was pretty far back there. And that doesn't happen without the punter.
Yeah, great punting. We know his brother is a great kicker. I don't know if you've seen the clips. He broke the NFL field goal record in high school. I believe the NFL record's 66 yards. He kicked a 67-yarder in Washington. He's not even at altitude, right? He could come here and probably kick a 70-yarder. So
is he coming to BYU by chance?
I mean, we can't. That's a guy we can't miss on.
No,
right?
you kind of got to pull out the stops. Like Cosmo has to go visit him shirtless and see what we can work out.
Take him out of the Cougar tails with
bacon. I don't even care if he didn't pre-order it, man. Let's just give him this thing.
We got to get Rico's brother in here.
Okay, sweet. That's it for the pod. This has been the STLK in the UTA Cougars podcast. We'll be back on this feed on Thursday morning, I believe.
Texas.
It's a huge game. I can't wait to talk about it, man.
It's going to be great. Going to be a fun weekend.